Good morning, Lonnie Cooper from the Ray King's Mortgage Company, and today I wanted to speak to everyone about a really interesting article I read about raising credit scores. As you know, credit scores are incredibly important in the mortgage world. My FICO, Credit Karma, Credit Sesame is one of them, American Express, Discover, they all give you opportunities to see your credit score, even though it's not really your credit score. They give you indicators, they give you estimates and averages, but they're not your actual credit score when a mortgage lender runs it. Nonetheless, subscribe to them, especially the free ones. You can still find errors there and have an idea where your score is. But in that same vein, today, at least the article I read, was 10 ways to raise your credit score. Why is raising your credit score important? Obviously, you get a better mortgage rate. It's not rocket science. In addition to lowering your mortgage rate, it also lowers your mortgage insurance. And not everyone knows that. If you're putting less than 20% down and you opt to take mortgage insurance, the PMI that you pay each month is on a sliding scale from your credit score. If your credit score is a 760 or higher, you have the lowest monthly mortgage insurance factor that they calculate against your loan amount. If you're 720 to 740, you pay higher mortgage insurance. If you're a 700 to 720, you pay higher. If you're 680, it's brutal how much PMI you pay. It could be 2 to 3 times the amount that would be there at 760 credit score. So managing your credit score by only a few points can make an enormous difference in your monthly payment, especially when you start getting into the secondary tiers, the A- and the B levels of credit. It's unbelievable what 4 to 8 points can do. So 10 ways to raise your credit score now that you realize how much 5 or 10 points can make. Number one, dispute errors. Do the Credit Sesames or the Credit Karmas, free credit reports. If there's errors there, get them off. Get them off immediately. Don't be lazy about it. It can take a while. It can take a few months. And if you're in that home shopping process and you find a house immediately and you go under contract and you have a lock or rate, that's not the time to start disputing errors. You want to dispute errors in advance. You want to be proactive about it so that you're not up against some gun of a closing date and changing your credit score in time. So there's no reason not to. It's like anything else. It's like getting a health check once a year at the doctor's. You just have to make it part of your annual routine. Just check your credit, see what's out there. Check your limits, which is a big one. Most people don't consider the credit limits. You just have your limit and that's what it is. But make sure that your reported limits are current versus what they actually are. So you don't want it to look like you're maxing out all the time. If they gave you a $5,000 or $10,000 limit, but the credit report's reporting a $2,000 limit on your credit card, that actually has a big impact. So there's times where what's on your credit report as the maximum limit of your credit card, it's lower than what it really is. And that's just a weird thing you would never think of. But it happens, and that has a huge impact on your score if you carry a balance during the month. It's not about carrying balances month to month. Even if everyone pays their credit card off every month, it's about running a balance during the month and how high that balance gets relative to the max. That's the math that they're looking at. If you have a $5,000 credit card limit and you carry $4,000 balance throughout the month, and then you knock it out at the end of the month to zero, that's 80% utilization. But if that card actually has a $10,000 limit, it's 40% utilization. But you're not checking your credit report to see if they're properly listing that maximum. So it's just a crazy little thing to try to look for once a year, that they have the correct limits up there. Another one is get a credit card or get multiple credit cards. It's okay to have 3 or 4 credit cards, and if you're going to need to carry balances, then keep smaller balances on several cards than a large balance on one card. It's the same math about the percentage of utilization. If your max is $5,000 and you need to have $2,000 in credit card debt, running your bills, running your what have you, do it over 3 or 4 cards so that the impact as a percentage is lower. Makes huge differences on your credit score. Spread, so call that, spread it. Become an authorized user. So maybe you don't use a lot of credit and your credit report reflects that. Your score is fairly low and the reason is you have no cards, or maybe you have 1 card. Pick someone with perfect credit, obviously, a family member who has great credit, and ask them if you can be an authorized user on their account. It's a phone call, an application. You can either get a credit card with that or not get a credit card with it, or cut up what comes. But call your grandparents, your parents, your aunt, your uncle, and become an authorized user on that account. As long as they're paying the bill, it looks great for you. You bring up your credit score essentially artificially. I mean, you're not even doing anything. If they give you a card and you use it, it is what it is, but I like it for just adding it to your kids, your teenage kids, your 20-year-old kids. Put them on your credit cards and don't even tell them about it. They don't even know. And all of a sudden, they have great credit at 22 and they've done nothing about it. It's a ridiculous loophole that people don't use nearly enough. It's authorized users. Just put your kids on your accounts once they turn 18 and don't let them know anything about it. Underuse your cards. 30% is the number. Stay under 30% of the maximum. $1,000 credit limit, stay under 30% at all costs. So underusing your credit cards is the big one. The next one goes into what I had said earlier about the maximum limit showing up on your credit report, making sure that the maximum limit's accurate versus your statement. This is raise your credit limit, something you would generally, if you're not maxing your cards out or having trouble managing your finances, you're not going to normally do. But if you call Visa, call your Bank of America credit card, call your Discover card and say, look, I know my limit's at $5,000. I'd like it to $10,000, and then maybe throw a bluff at them, like getting great offers right now for American Express. And they're like, you know what? Well, they put you on hold for 30 seconds. They go, oh, we got you up to $10,000. Congratulations, Mr. Johnson. As soon as they raise that, now that little balance that you carry throughout the month as you're using it, your score is going to go higher because you have a higher limit and a smaller balance relative to that higher limit. Unless, they'll do this if you have discipline issues and you're redlining every month at the maximum amount of your credit card, then you're just giving yourself more fuel to the fire. So, understand who you are as a person, and if raising your limit just gives you the ability to do more damage, this is not for you. But if you keep small balances, this is a great way to raise your score even higher. Pay your bills on time. I think that's a fairly obvious one. I don't know how much detail I would have to go on paying your bills on time. And then mix it up, which is interesting. Use a different kind of credit card. Can make a modest boost to your score. Most people just have 1 or 2 favorite credit cards. They use them every month, and that's the end of it. But here you might take out a small personal loan from a credit union, buy a piece of furniture or appliance on installment. All those report differently. So if you show that you can pay off small installment loans well, credit union loans well, and credit card loans well, that's also part of the calculation or formula. Though I wouldn't get too fancy and excited with that. I would just keep a couple of cards and keep very small balances on them. Was that the 2-minute warning, Bob? 14 seconds. All right. So at this point, I'll go to any questions from the audience. Scott.
So my understanding is the highest credit scoring is 850. Okay, so I've never seen anybody anywhere near there. How would you get closer to 850? I mean, I pay all my bills on time. I have low balances and high amounts, and I can't get over 830 at this point. But how do you get to 850?
Short answer is it's irrelevant. If you have a 760 credit score, everyone's going to give you the best they can give you. So they stop rewarding you over 760. So I would find you, like if I'm a teacher in class and you just got 100 on your test, you're raising your hand going, I need a 108. How do I get a 108? It's like, settle down. Yeah. There's a lot of morons around here. We're trying to get them a little smarter. So
you're 2 standard deviations on the right side.
Yeah, so Yes, in a perfect world, the reports say you can get to 850. I've never seen it. I've seen 820. I've seen 830. I think you have to walk on water to be an 860. Like it's ridiculous, but it's unnecessary. Like 780, 790. They're like, what does it get me? Same thing you would get at 760. Like they just stop defining perfect past 760. It's just extra credit. Scott.
As far as the closing accounts, you don't recommend it, correct?
Not anymore. They used to penalize you for having 8 different cards. You know, your wife would go out and go to Bloomingdale's and go to Macy's and go to Strawbridge's and get all these cards because they would give you 10% off. Then they would say, well, this person could go nuts on a weekend and, you know, ramp up $8,000 in 8 different cards. Now they've stopped penalizing you nearly as much. Having 3, 4, 5 credit cards open is fine, and having older cards open with no balances is also good. They don't want you closing out very old credit cards, which is interesting, but like you're now showing a history of 5, 10, 15 years of having these open lines of credit, and they give you better scores because of that. So don't close a whole bunch of cards out.
Like college, they used to let you enroll and get a free sweatshirt.
Many soft pretzels in my day at Penn State just for a credit card on the street corner. Yep.
You mentioned taking, putting furniture or appliance or what have you on a credit card. Some places when they do laser eye surgery or something like that, I put that on. It's through Wells Fargo. That'll close out here very shortly. Try to keep that bank account open.
Depends on how they structure it. That's usually an installment loan, I think, where it's paid off a set amount every month, goes to a 0 balance. Can you reuse it again after that?
Well, there was a higher credit or a higher limit to it than what I had, so than what I used. So
Depends on how they structure it. If it's like a credit card or if it's an installment loan, it doesn't sound closed-ended, closed-end, where it's like 120 payments or 60 payments and it's over. If you can go back into it and tap it again, then it might be better to leave it open and maybe not use it if you're using other cards. But I wouldn't just necessarily close something that's open that you've demonstrated a good payment history on at this point. Any other questions? Dave?
I'm going to ask something about mortgages for a second. If you go and buy a house and you say you take 9% loan value and you take the PMI, does that, unless you refinance out of that, is that PMI on the eternity of the loan?
So it depends on the type of loan. It depends on the type of loan, but no. At 10% down, there is no loan where the PMI will not drop off down the road at 20% equity. With an FHA loan, a few years ago they changed the guidelines. If you put 9% down or anything below 10% down, the mortgage insurance, the PMI is there for the life of the loan, all 360 payments, which I think is brutal. I mean, it's like the whole American dream of like, get to 20% equity or pay your loan down and this PMI drops off. It doesn't. You can make a payment in the first 6 months for 90% of the balance. You still have PMI for the next 20 years or whatever you've paid the loan down to. So that's only in an FHA loan, and that's only in under 10% down. If you do 10% down, even FHA, drops off 5 years or 20% equity, whichever happens later. So a minimum of 5 years with FHA. So no, there's no loan at 10% down where PMI does not drop off. Adam?
When we bought our house, it was 4 years ago. Once we had 20% in equity,
Yes.
PMI was supposed to drop off. So we paid down the house, but at the same time, the house went up in value.
Sure.
Well above that 20%. Sent the letter in and said, hey,
Yep.
refund my PMI. And they said, hey, send us $650, and then we'll get back to you in 6 months. Is there any recourse there?
Recourse?
Yeah.
Refi. That's your recourse. But no, for the most part, it's not that they just said no, or they shouldn't just say no per se.
No, they just stretched it out into perpetuity, basically.
Right. They like to play games. They like their PMI. They enjoy the insurance that you pay for each month for the possibility of a default on the loan. So what happens is it's a sliding scale. You're making extra payments or your normal payments, and your principal is going lower. The amount of interest you're paying is going lower. and as 2 years goes by, 3 years go by, you know your neighbors are selling for more, so you're getting this appreciation, which is great. You're paying your loan down, you're getting appreciation, you're really gaining equity both ways. You call your mortgage lender, you say, hey, I bought for 4 years ago at 10% down. I'm doing all the math, there's no way I don't have 20% equity now. They say, no problem, send in a form. So why not, can we just start the process now? But now, sending a form already kills 20% of the people that call it, let's start with forms. So sending a form is a great step for them, protects them. But you send in the form, you mail in the check for $650, which is
An appraisal.
for an appraisal, which is higher than any appraisal fee in the nation.
Right.
So they've already marked that up, a little more juice, and they send out their guy. Their guy is the most ultra-conservative appraiser on the planet. His job and his instructions each day are, let's get nice and low on this appraised value. So when he takes your assignment 5 months later, he shoots pictures of your house and other houses in the neighborhood, and he picks the foreclosure that happened 3 miles down the road, and he goes, haha, look at that, you don't have 20% equity and you lose. Does it happen every time? No. It happens a lot more than getting a new refinance and an appraiser who's less biased.
The other thing that I noticed is they break out all the expenses, the taxes, the this, the that, and PMI was one of the line items. The following month, it all got bundled into one line item, taxes and fees.
It sounds more like, I don't know why they would restructure that. I don't know if that was like an accounting thing.
I mean, it coincided with January, but it's still the oddest thing.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
It's First Trust, it's not like it's some shady.
Right, no, it's a great bank.
Yeah.
I have friends there if you want me to make a phone call.
It would be worth,
Yeah, you got it. That's it for questions, thank you.